Most men are taught the same lie from the moment they're old enough to notice women. Be kind, be generous, be available. And if you do all of that, she'll choose you. But look around. The men who give the most are rarely remembered. The men who explain themselves are rarely respected. That isn't bitterness. It's pattern recognition. If you've ever watched a woman lose interest in a man who did nothing wrong, this is where it starts. Predictability, availability, emotional safety without consequence. Most men think attraction grows when comfort grows. They believe consistency creates desire, but value erodes when it's guaranteed. Desire doesn't reward effort. It responds to tension, and tension disappears the moment a woman knows she cannot lose you. If she knows you'll stay no matter what, she stops feeling you. The nervous system does not attach to what feels permanent and risk-free. It attaches to what could disappear. This is why the man who walks away lives longer in her mind than the man who stayed. Silence creates more reaction than explanation. Absence cuts deeper than anger. Like men are tolerated, respected men are felt. It is safer to be feared than loved. Not cruelty, but the awareness of loss. Real fear is the understanding that access to you is conditional. That crossing a line has consequences. Standards you are willing to enforce. Women sense when a man's limits are soft, when his rules bend under pressure. And once that realization settles in, something shuts down. She stops wondering. This is why love without leverage becomes background noise. It's warm, but weightless. Men try to compensate by giving more, but they are removing the last trace of uncertainty. Contrast that with the man who doesn't argue. He simply withdraws. Not theatrically, cleanly. One moment he's there. The next, he's gone. No closure. No explanation. That absence forces her nervous system to register consequence. Suddenly, the dynamic changes. She starts replaying interactions, wondering if this loss is permanent. That internal dialogue is where attachment begins. This is where most men panic. But it doesn't mean being cold. It means being non-negotiable. Understanding that your presence is a privilege she maintains through respect. You don't threaten. You don't warn. You leave once. And that single act teaches her more about your value than months of loyalty ever could. Value is proven through selectiveness. A man who stays through anything communicates his fear of being alone. This is why be yourself destroys men. Attraction responds to fullness. A man who is full does not chase. He observes. He lets her come toward him. That movement is what creates gravity. Women do not obsess over men who center them. They obsess over men who center themselves. A man who has direction and a life that doesn't pause for female approval is dangerous in the best way. You can't starve him. You can't leash him. You can't destabilize him with silence. When a woman realizes that, she becomes more invested. Because your absence costs her something. This is where fear enters. Not fear of harm, but fear of loss. The strongest emotional regulator there is. Relationships that die slowly don't explode. They fade. The men who keep relationships alive are the most grounded. Pain endured for self-respect builds internal authority. This is why men who do everything right often lose. They don't give unlimited access. And when they leave clean. No stalking, no long goodbyes, no attempts to be remembered. Ironically, that makes them unforgettable. The female mind hates unfinished business. When you disappear without begging, you become a mystery. And mystery pulls harder than reassurance ever could. This shifts the dynamic to can you keep me? Respect must come before love. Leverage is simply the ability to walk away. The man who can walk away holds more power than the man who stays. She may move on, but there will always be a reference point. A man who didn't beg. A man who chose himself. And that memory reshapes how she sees every man after him. This is the first framework. Power over approval. Until you understand this, nothing else works. The moment you start honoring yourself, the game changes. Not outwardly, internally. This is the first framework. Power over approval. Until you understand this, nothing else works. Because a man who needs to be liked cannot be respected. The moment you stop trying to win her and start honoring yourself, the game changes. Not outwardly, internally. And internal shifts are the ones that last. Attraction is ruled by perception. Being good is irrelevant if you don't look powerful while being good. A woman is not evaluating your values. She is reading signals. You are not judged by your intentions, only by your presentation. Image is not costume. It is coherence. It's the alignment between how you move and what you tolerate. Presence is what carries meaning into the nervous system. A woman does not think her way into desire. She senses it. She notices what you don't do. Men think attraction is built through expression. It's actually built through restraint. Every time you overshare, you flatten your image. Being felt is the goal, and being felt requires space. Mystery is selective revelation. When you explain everything, you deny her imagination. This is why men who talk less are remembered more. They become a reference point. Stillness amplifies presence. When you're calm in moments where others rush, your energy stands out. Certainty is not loud. It's settled. Controlling your image begins with controlling your reactions. Most men betray themselves emotionally. They reveal need, and need signals scarcity. Women are sensitive to incongruence. If your words say confidence, but your body says anxiety, the body wins. Your job is to make your presence undeniable. Silence is space, and space creates hierarchy. The man who is comfortable in silence communicates, "I am not afraid of losing you." That message lands without words. Men who pace themselves create depth. Men who overshare reveal their peak too soon. Polarity requires distance. The difference between who you are and what she knows. This is the second framework. Image is the medium through which your value is transmitted. If you don't shape it, it will shape itself around your insecurities. Every woman tests, not maliciously, but to discover your center. She's asking one question: does he break or does he hold? This is the third framework, the lion and the fox. The lion represents force and movability. The fox represents awareness, timing. Together, they create unpredictable stability. Most men are reactive. The lion does not flinch. The fox does not reveal his hand. When she cannot anticipate your reaction, her attention sharpens. When she becomes emotional, the fox emerges. You listen. You observe. You don't rush to stabilize her. You allow her energy to move without being pulled into it. Leadership is not absorption. Leadership is containment. A man who contains emotion without suppressing it becomes a stabilizing force. His calm creates contrast. When a line is crossed, the lion appears. Not with anger, with action, a shift, a withdrawal, a boundary enforced without explanation. Most men announce boundaries. Powerful men embody them. Announced boundaries invite negotiation. Embodied boundaries in discussion. Announced boundaries invite negotiation. Embodied boundaries in discussion. When a man says nothing and leaves once, his silence teaches far more. The fox understands timing. He does not correct every behavior. He watches patterns, not moments. He lets behavior repeat. He gathers information. Then, when he acts, it's precise. One movement, one decision, no excess. This precision creates authority, because authority is not volume. It's accuracy. When you respond too often, you dilute impact. When you speak too much, you reveal need. Silence preserves leverage. A woman testing a man is not looking for perfection. She is looking for solidity. Can he remain himself when the emotional temperature changes? Reactive men are easy to control. Responsive men are impossible to predict. And unpredictability, when grounded in consistency, is intoxicating. This is why the strongest men often appear quiet. They don't rush to prove anything. They wait. They watch. They move only when movement matters. The lion protects your boundaries. The fox protects your mind. Together, they make you grounded and unreadable. And unreadable men are remembered. This is the fourth framework, psychological leverage. Control rarely comes from force. Real control is quieter. It comes from internal tension. Influence requires friction. Not loud friction, internal friction. The kind that keeps the mind spinning long after the interaction ends. He lightly displaces her belief. Not with debate, but with ambiguity. That's how you see it. That single sentence does more than a paragraph ever could. Now part of her still holds her belief, but another part starts questioning it. That division is leverage. Not because you convinced her, but because you removed certainty. Impact is strongest when concentrated. Injuries are remembered when delivered cleanly and once. Rewards are desired when given slowly and unpredictably. The man with leverage does something different. He disengages. Once. No warnings. No build-up. Just absence. That absence creates a shock to the system, because there's nothing to respond to. Her nervous system now has to process consequence without distraction. Then he returns to center. He doesn't anchor his mood to her behavior. This pacing conditions the nervous system. She never feels fully settled. She feels engaged. Psychological leverage requires emotional economy. Say less. Do less. Let impact do the work. This also applies to observation. The man with leverage watches behavior. And when he speaks once. You're different when you feel challenged. Then silence. It exposes awareness. Awareness is destabilizing because now she realizes she's being seen. And observation creates vulnerability. Over time, this creates an internal imbalance. She invests more energy trying to regain certainty. Meanwhile, you remain centered. You are not responsible for managing another adult's emotional comfort at the expense of your own center. You are responsible for maintaining integrity. You are clear about what you tolerate, clear about when you disengage. You don't announce these things repeatedly. You demonstrate them once. After that, the system runs itself. This is the fifth framework, control through absence. Predictability kills memory. When you are always available, you become part of the background. Your presence loses edge because it carries no risk. The human mind does not attach deeply to what it can access at will. It attaches to what it might lose. Absence is not withdrawal as punishment. It is absence as consequence. The man who understands absence removes himself cleanly. He simply stops offering access. And that removal creates a void. She starts replaying the last moments. She invests. Absence only works when presence mattered. If your presence had no gravity, your disappearance creates relief. Absence is not a starting move. It's a response. The key is how you leave. You do not vanish in rage. You leave calm. Calm departure communicates finality without hostility. And calm is terrifying to someone who assumed they had control. When you return, if you return, you do not explain yourself. You return unchanged, unbothered, centered, unaffected. This signals something profound. You are not destabilized. This is what creates legacy. Most men are experiences. A few men are reference points. A reference point is defined by emotional shift. You become a reference point through contrast. You didn't chase. You didn't collapse. You chose yourself. And that choice forces reflection. Her standards adjust. Her perception changes. This is what it means to be the turning point. You don't become that by trying to be memorable. You become that by being principled under pressure, by allowing loss instead of negotiating self-respect. This is why the men who leave cleanly are remembered longest. They don't tie up loose ends. They leave meaning unfinished, and unfinished meaning lingers. This is the final framework. Not dominance, not manipulation, but gravity. Gravity is what remains when you stop chasing and start standing. It pulls, or it doesn't. This is part 6, internal control. The deepest form of control is not external, it's internal. Without it, everything you've learned becomes brittle. All leverage works only when it comes from self-possession. Internal control begins with one hard truth. You must be willing to lose outcomes. Not pretend willingness, actual willingness. Most men sabotage themselves because they secretly fear the cost. True control means when you leave, you've already accepted the loss. Not as punishment, as a price you're willing to pay to remain aligned with yourself. That acceptance is felt as calm. A man who is internally settled does not need to monitor reactions. He doesn't keep score. He moves once, and lets reality respond however it will. That is freedom. Most men adjust their behavior constantly based on feedback. If she leans in, they push. If she pulls away, they chase. Their center lives outside themselves. Internal control requires boredom tolerance. A man with internal control can sit in neutral without discomfort. He doesn't need constant excitement or affirmation. It allows you to wait, to observe, to not rush intimacy. Men with internal control let time do the filtering. They let consistency earn access. Being honest does not mean being transparent. You don't hide emotions, but you don't unload them. Your emotions pass through you. They don't drive you. This is what gives your words weight. Men who vent often feel lighter, but look weaker. Men who choose silence until clarity arrives feel heavier, but look grounded. You don't suppress feeling. You contain it. Containment is what makes a man feel safe and dangerous at the same time. Safe because he won't explode. Dangerous because he won't bend. Internal control means you don't moralize your behavior. You don't need to justify yourself. You know why you move. You know what you tolerate. That's enough. He sees himself as aligned. Alignment is what creates peace. And peace is what creates presence. Presence is what women feel before they feel anything else. This is the state where attraction becomes a side effect rather than a goal. You stop trying to create impact, and impact happens. You stop managing perception, and perception sharpens. You stop thinking in terms of control, and control emerges naturally. Because people respond to coherence. He feels when something is misaligned, and he acts accordingly. This is the deepest form of power. Not the ability to influence others, but the ability to remain yourself regardless of outcome. Once you have this, everything else becomes optional. You don't fear loss because you've already chosen yourself. You don't fear loneliness because your center is internal. They are the most intact. They don't collapse under desire. They stand. And standing creates gravity. This is the final framework. Not something you apply. Something you become. Everything either aligns or exits. Real power doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from being grounded enough to walk away without losing yourself. You don't win by chasing. You don't lead by explaining. Most men will hear this and nod. Very few will integrate it. Because integration costs comfort. It costs approval. It costs outcomes you were hoping for. But it gives you something most men never experience. Control over yourself. And once you have that, everything else changes. Life stops pulling you around by emotion. You stop reacting. You start choosing. If you're ready to keep going, to refine this mindset, then you already know what to do. Not for motivation, not for hype, but because what comes next is about mastery of yourself.